AEW to introduce six-man tag team championship belts. We're going to talk about everything that you need to know in regard to these new title belts. When are they expected to debut? How are they going to crown the first-time champions? And is this happening all before the mid-card title? All right, guys, we're talking about it right here. It's your boy Ango. Stay tuned. All right, everybody, it's your boy Ango, youtube.com/ANGOYT, twitter.com/Tango with Ango. All right, guys, we are talking about the AEW six-man tag championship belts, but most importantly, we have a very important question to answer from Ask Ango. Normally, these are going to be wrestling related, but Real Chosen 11 asks, why have you suddenly changed your brand to Ango, or why did you feel the need to do so? What was wrong with your former brand? So I actually kind of want to address this right away. As you guys know, my channel was previously called Destination PW, and while I'm very happy about the success that we've had with that channel brand, I look at myself as somebody who wants to be a future TV star. I want to be somewhere in the world of broadcasting, television, radio, I don't know, something along the lines of that. And if I ever have the opportunity to do so, I want to carve out my own success being myself. For those who don't know, Ango is a formation of my first and last name, which is a lot easier to pronounce Ango instead of my real name. And I think this has kind of been my thing. For so many years I've done YouTube. I've done YouTube over 10 years. Every channel that I've ever had, I've always been known as Ango, with just some weird, wacky channel name. So this time I'm just kind of being myself as a personality, doing my own kind of content. And honestly, I don't know if it's gonna happen. It's very well possible, but maybe one day we kind of do more than just wrestling on here. That's always a potential thing that could happen too. But right now I love wrestling and I want to be known as Ango. I don't want to hide behind a brand name. And the best thing I'll say, just to leave it at that, is I also one day want to be on ESPN. One day I want to be on Fox Sports, WWE, AEW, something along the lines of that. It's a lot easier just introducing myself as Ango instead of Destination PW. I know that sounds silly, but that's it. Hopefully I could address that for the final time. But guys, we want to talk about the six-man tag team championship belts, right? I know everybody's kind of excited about this because AEW has been doing some really great things. Obviously, we know that AEW as a company, they've pretty much secured their spot on TV for the next few years, unless for some reason something drastic really happens to their ratings to the point where TNT just doesn't give a shit about them. That's not really going to happen here. AEW got that huge TV deal. We talked about it in a video as well. There's going to be a link to a playlist, or it might even be on the screen somewhere. If you guys have missed any of my last few videos on AEW, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened with AEW. You should check it out. But basically, we know that AEW is doing some pretty big things. And the reason is because they are consistent. They're working towards a great product, and they're working towards being the true alternative in pro wrestling. And I think a lot of times in a situation like this, a lot of people, a lot of fans in general, are looking at AEW to kind of follow the same formula that every wrestling company has done. And as you guys know, in WWE or Impact Wrestling, there is some sort of mid-card championship. So AEW doesn't have one right now. And it makes a lot of sense that AEW, which, as you guys know, I think it's pretty clear at this point, a lot of their focus has been tag team wrestling. Something that WWE, Impact, ROH, and a lot of other companies really just struggle with. AEW's focus is tag team wrestling, and more specifically, they have quite a few tag teams that are part of six-man teams. So according to the Wrestling Observer, it sounds like AEW is actually planning on having a tournament on the Jericho Cruise number 3. So next year, February or March, they're going to have a Jericho Cruise again. It's going to be more with AEW involved, and they are going to do a live TV show from the cruise, which, if you guys didn't know, right now, the Jericho Cruise is technically pre-taped. AEW plans to be more involved next year, and the idea is AEW will have a six-man tag tournament to crown the first ever six-man tag team championships. And I love this idea, honestly. I don't think we need another title just yet in terms of tag teams. I think if AEW were smart, I think they would still introduce a mid-card title just for some of the guys that are on the roster. Sean Spears, Joey Janela, Darby Allin, a lot of these guys that could be main eventers. Right now, the scene is kind of too popular, and I don't think it's a bad idea to have another prize possession, especially since most of those guys don't actually compete in a tag team. So I would like to see that happen before next year. But if AEW and this report stands true, then it could be very well possible that we don't see any new title belts until the Jericho Cruise next year, in which we would finally have our first set of 6-man tag champions. I'm excited about this. I really think 6-man titles, like, these are exactly what AEW needs to be different. WWE hasn't done it, let alone WWE hasn't put a focus on their tag team division. I'd say it's a good idea. I would say that's a really, really good idea for AEW. Now, one thing I also want to add when it comes to the 6-man tag titles is that if we have to wait an entire year for this to happen, we should be expecting some really big storylines. Because nothing is better than hyping up the announcement of a new title than preparing for that division prior to actually doing it. So the idea is this. If WWE, for example, were to introduce 6-man tag titles, they can't just randomly say, hey guys, here's a whole bunch of random 6-man tag teams, right? You kind of have to build towards that. Now, AEW is already at an advantage because they already have so many teams of 3. And I think that is so incredibly important because now the more that we see them highlighted, which we've seen them highlighted so much thus far, I think we've seen them quite a bit. I think it makes a lot more sense for AEW to go that route. Just keep building up that division and then start talking about the titles and then start teasing the titles. And then you make the big announcement, announce the tournament, all of that good stuff. We all saw how WWE introduced the women tag team division. It was just like thrown out and a whole bunch of women formed a tag team. Even though I like what they're doing with the tag team titles now for the women, it was a really, really stupid introduction. Kind of like how the 24/7 championship belt is. And I think with AEW, they can kind of learn from their competition here. I think they can introduce something very special. And on top of that, I think we're going to see something really cool as the end product. Now, this is the part that I've been waiting to talk about the entire video because this is my biggest fear with AEW. Tag team wrestling is very huge with AEW. It's clearly a very, very big attraction for AEW. Their main events are tag team wrestling. And I understand that. But I don't want to see these new titles overshadow what you have with the World Championship belt. That is my only fear. I am a firm believer in pro wrestling. The World Championship belt is the #1 title, and that should always be the main event. Aside from the tournament in which they would crown these new titles, the only thing I would hope for is the main event. Like, I would be okay if one main event has the 6-man tag titles. But other than that, even though tag team wrestling is your big focus, I still believe that World Championships should always be the main event. If I am AEW, I would continue to make sure that the world title means the utmost important thing. It's like the most important thing for the show. Because quite honestly, it's not always the most important thing for WWE. Sometimes it's not even the most important thing for TNA or Impact. It sure as hell isn't always the most important thing for ROH. Sometimes more than WWE it is. But the problem is these companies struggle because they always want to put over an act, right? Like if Brock Lesnar's not the world champion, but Brock Lesnar's main eventing, you're saying that Brock Lesnar is more important than your title, which basically as a sport, you know, I know it's sports entertainment, but as a sport, the world championship should always be very, very important. So I'm hoping AEW just kind of learns from their competition in that sense. And I think they will. I genuinely believe that they will. But only time will tell. 6-man tag titles coming before a mid-card title, that's kind of what's expected. I don't like that idea. I do think you need to have something for some of the guys on the roster who don't get that opportunity. There's so many people on the roster that we're not seeing consistently. And I know there's been talk about a lot of these people on the roster learning from, you know, Dustin Rhodes and Jerry Lynn. And that's awesome. You know, Sonny Kiss is learning backstage. Like, that's really cool stuff. And I appreciate that about AEW before these people go on TV. But you have a pretty nice roster that not everybody has gotten to see. So going into 2020, 2021, I'm hoping that we start seeing more of these people and have an opportunity for the mid-card title. And honestly, if there is a mid-card title, a lot of people predict TV title. If that's the case, let's introduce that before the 6-man tag championships. Let's have 6-man tag team championships. And as you continue to build your women's roster, maybe in a couple years from now, I'm not saying right away because then it's going to be too saturated, but maybe a couple years from now, you kind of take the same approach as WWE and introduce the women tag team championship belts. For me, that is what's important. I think that would make a great product for AEW, and ultimately I'd be very excited about that. My pick for the first ever 6-man tag champs, it's going to be Jurassic Express. And since wins and losses matter, hopefully AEW kind of starts pushing the accelerator with that. Now, obviously, there's SCU. There's the Best Friends. You know, there's quite a bit of stuff that you could do, guys, but that's what I want to see. So I want to know what you guys think. And don't forget, you could become a member of Ango Plus starting at $1 a month. All right, boys and girls, I'll see you next time right here on Ango.